So you want to know how to beat Earth Summoner's Road? Well, only thing you gotta do, get your best team, and you're gonna go right up to this boss and... Okay, this is a little bit harder than I expected. Summoner's Road is the newest challenge event that Grand Summoners has to offer. And it's pretty great as a mode, but if you're kind of newer to the game, this can be a real struggle and pretty stressful. So in today's video, I'm hoping that I can maybe alleviate that pressure from new and vets alike. I'm gonna assume that you know how Summoner's Road works, where, you know, units get locked and all that type of stuff. The basics I'm assuming you already have covered, and you really just want to know how to do each stage. Stage 1. Extremely easy. For this stage, I highly recommend that you use a luck comp if possible, like as you see here, and not using too many equips, especially if you have limited amounts of equips. You don't need too much for this, maybe a few support items or a good physical item or something else, and you should be able to easily clear the first stage, no problem. Now the second stage, pretty much kind of the same principle applies here. If you're able to nuke this is definitely where you're going to want to nuke it, preferably maybe like a dark nuke, but you can do any type of nuke you want here. If you want to try prioritize luck units, definitely try to do it, since you can add more to the luck bonus gauge. And then finally we get to the third stage. This is where it gets hard, ladies and gentlemen. We have a few ads here. They don't matter whatsoever. They just have crit resist. You can still kill them. They're not crit immune, so don't worry about that. Main boss himself though has a few things that we need to look out for. He has shield killer. He also is resistant to earth damage, and he is able to poison us. And if we get poisoned whenever he uses his art, it will deal a massive 6,000 fixed damage to whoever is poisoned. If you're not poisoned, whenever he does that art, it only deals 3,000 damage. And if that wasn't enough, this boss also will only take damage if you crit him and if he is poisoned. If he is not poisoned and you are not critting him, he will not take damage. This means that we need a character that's able to crit on their attacks and deal most of the damage. We also maybe want to opt in for a poison unit, since we need to poison this boss pretty consistently. And we need a unit that's able to support us and cleanse status effects, especially poisons, or we need to use some type of really strong health equip to be able to cleanse status effects. And we need some type of really strong arch general to kind of round out the team. So these are the units that I use myself. We have the Urza, the Mixie, the Juno, and the Rimuru, with these equips, by the way. I will say, if you do have the 5-star defense Viper may do you a little bit more good here than using other defense items. But if you don't have Viper, then just use whatever defense item you possibly can if you do have a defense slot available to you. Even with this team though, we do kind of cut it a little bit close when it comes to the final phase here. But as long as you have your defense items up, and as long as your healer is doing tons of healing or is able to kind of help mitigate that huge burst of damage that's going to come at that last threshold, you should be okay to actually clear this fight. In terms of what other units I would recommend using here, if you don't want to use Urza, any other critical damage dealer should be fine in this spot. For your poison replacement though, there's a lot of characters you have at your disposal. One of the most popular choices was actually Keat, since Keat's, you know, a 5-star character. He's in the base pool. A lot of people have him, and as long as you awaken him, he should be able to handle the poison mechanic pretty easily. If you don't want to use Keat, you could use Groitz. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can use them. Or even a character like Pola would be good as well. In terms of who to replace for Juno though, since this is the main arch general, I don't want to say to use Emperor yet, or to use a character like Haruto, since they are extremely good later on the Summoner's Road. But just use whoever you want. If you want to use a burst arch general here, like a Serpa for an example, you absolutely can. Or a character like Sylph would also be great. And if you don't have Rimuru for the cleanses, you can actually use 12th generation Mizuki, and they will also suffice as well. If you don't have that, your last character that you can use for a cleanse could be a character like Aristilla. Now, if you don't have any of the characters that I just mentioned, or any of the characters that I'm going to be mentioning for any of the future stages, here's the next best thing you could do. You could either join a Discord server and ask in there for some help and see if someone can help you make a team to beat this stage. Or you could check the past clears of the stage that you're on and see if anyone else has a team that maybe you can copy so you can push through this stage. Let's move on to stage 4. This is against the man Y2, but before we get to Y2, we have a few ads we have to deal with. And these ads are kind of a little bit pesky. The first ad you see right here, this is a dragon. He sucks. He does not take any damage from crits, so don't use crit buffs right here if you have a character that can buff crit. The other guy, Blue Skeleton, he's kind of chill. He doesn't really do too much, but in order to deal damage to him, you have to poison him. So make sure you bring some poison equips to deal with this Skelly boy. Then we got Herrick, which is the mini boss of this stage. Herrick has one main mechanic that you need to look out for, and it's the fact that he can cancel damage nullification, meaning if you're running a character that was a taunt tank, he will cancel their damage nullification and they'll just receive all that damage straight up. So yeah, if you're using a taunt tank, don't have their taunts up right here. Y2, he has HP auto recovery killer. This means that he will deal extra damage to anybody with a heal over time buff. And he also will inflict poison onto the team. But unlike the last fight, this is where poison is beneficial to your team, but also somewhat of a detriment. The more poison stacks you have in this fight, the more damage you actually do to Y2. However, at 30% HP, he will deal a massive nuke, and the nuke will scale based on how many poison instances you have on the team. So there's a lot of mechanics that need to be tackled in this fight. So what units and equips do we actually use to go about doing this? You can use taunt tanks on this fight, and the best taunt tank to use is actually Volti LR. So make sure he has a blessed necklace and a good defense equip, and he should be fine. As for the other units that we're going to be using, we're going to be using someone like Emperor. Emperor is going to be able to give that damage res to the entire team, and also Archgen for everyone, and he has a 5-star magic and a 5-star physical slot, which means that you can put on a poison equip onto him to help deal with the blue skeletons in the first few stages. As for the next unit that we're going to be using here, we need some type of burst healer. So Lysistina is a great candidate, being able to give you tons of burst healing and also support the team with physical res debuffs on the enemy and also a physical damage buff if you want to use the art. And then finally, we have the last slot, and the last slot will just be a character that's able to maybe give the team a crit buff or something to help deal damage to Y2 in the final phase. And for me, I went with the man, the myth, War God Finn. And yeah, this team right here is probably the best team to tackle this fight with. You're able to clear this fight extremely quickly and extremely easily with this exact setup, and you really don't have to worry about much. But let's say you don't have these units. Are there replacements? Absolutely. The main team that people use if you don't have this setup is actually using the Sandstone and Desilia team. This exact team, I will say I have not cleared it. I have never attempted to use this team in order to beat it, but what I will do is down below in the comment section, if I'm able to find a video of someone using this team in order to beat this stage, I will link it in the pinned comment and description so you guys can use it as a reference point. But pretty much this team, its entire ordeal is revolving around tons of damage mitigation with characters like Sandstone, and then, you know, using Darkcilia as the main damage dealer while also archgening, and even adding in another damage resist character like Veil to give you as much DR as possible, since you're going to be taking the poison stacks head on. You get past that stage though, congratulations, you are on to stage 5. In terms of what we're going to be looking out for in this fight, really got to look out for two things. One is this Dark Karak. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. This guy is able to inflict disease on you, which doesn't really matter too much, but it is something you need to be aware of because this Karak will actually spawn in the boss room and will inflict your team with disease here and there. Talking about the boss room, the boss himself, he just deals damage to you, he poisons you, he stuns the rightmost unit, he then also inflicts paralysis on the team as well whenever he does his little stomp attack, and then he has a chance to one-shot the whole team with his breath attack, which is great. So this fight really becomes a DPS race. You gotta kill him before he kills you. So in order to do this, you bringing out all the stops. This is the final stage, ladies and gentlemen. You can use whoever you want. So we need some healers to counteract that poison debuff, because the poison debuff is the poison debuff from Groitz's event, you know, in Venom, which means you can't cure that. Since you can't cure it, we need tons of healing. So bring out your Harutos. If you have her, also use Mako here as well, since she's going to be able to give you tons of healing and also be able to slow down the boss a little bit, which is going to greatly help you in terms of surviving this fight. If you don't have Mako for that second support character though, don't fret, you don't need her. You could use other characters like a Serpa, Yo, Lisa, doesn't really matter. Whoever you want to use is going to be great. Now, in terms of our damage dealer though, this is where it gets spicy. One of the best damage dealers to use in this fight is actually going to be the man, the myth, the legend himself, Fire or Veil. He's able to ramp up tons of crit damage instantly and is able to just burst down this guy no problem. However, if you're like me and you don't have Fire or Veil, there's a lot of other damage dealers you can use. Characters like Batiste, Eris, War God Finn. I've even seen people clear this with Vox. So just use a competent damage dealer and you should be fine. And then as for the last unit you want to use here, you can use any type of damage buffing support if you have one available. So think of characters like Draken. 12th generation Mizuki is also amazing. Or if you're using Fire or Veil and she's not on the team yet, make sure you have a Lisa on the team to give Fire or Veil that insane equip CT. And then as for the equips, really just use whatever you want. One thing I will tell you though is that you may want to use a cleanse or something that's able to give you paralysis resist, because you don't want to be on this fight and you wind up needing to use like Haruto's True Art, and you can't use his True Art because he's paralyzed for days. And if you need a little extra push in terms of damage, one thing I would recommend too is putting on some type of equip on your team that maybe reduces the boss's elemental resist for whatever damage dealer you're using. Like for example, I was using Batiste, so I actually had True Nemesis Crow to kind of help me get a little bit extra damage on his last HP threshold. And if you get through this stage, ladies and gentlemen, congrats, you actually beat the Earth Summoner's Road. Now you gotta do it 2 more times. And then you gotta do it 3 more times. You know, the next day, then the next day, and then, you know, when it comes back, you gotta do it again, and then again, and you guys get the point. Hopefully, you found this video informative, and hopefully it helped you out in actually beating this stage. When it comes to Summoner's Road, it really comes down to, do you have the units or do you not? Or do you have the options available to you? If you don't, then don't stress out about it. The great thing about Summoner's Road is that you can go as far as you want, and you can turn back and get all the rewards and still are able to achieve your super awakenings for your characters. The longer you play the game, the more accessible this mode becomes, and you'll definitely be able to hit that stage 5 one day. But ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you all for coming out. It's been your bro P. If you enjoyed this video, highly recommend you check out either one of the videos popping on your screen right now. Great content, guarantee you'll love them. We'll have more Summoner's Road guides coming out in the future, so stick around for them whenever they drop. One last thing, don't forget to drink water.